Welcome, everyone. We're going to just give it another minute as we hit the 8 o'clock hour to let people that were planning on joining that are doing it on time rather than us diligent souls that are a little early. So, welcome everyone. This is Matt Caddo with the American Kratom Association. Thanks to each of you for joining this evening, particularly as we head into this holiday weekend. And by the way, happy Easter to everyone. And we hope that you and your families have a great holiday. And we have an assignment, obviously, that when the holiday feast is over on Monday morning, that we do need some help with. This has been kind of a crazy season with the bills that are popping around the country calling for bans. And when the legislators listen to the science and understand that even the FDA at this point is not saying that kratom is dangerous. In fact, they have publicly conceded that kratom appears to be well tolerated at all dose levels. But the combination of anti-kratom forces who ignore the science, don't care about the truth, and continue to perpetuate the myth that used to be, of course, promoted by the FDA. They continue to try to prosecute their case that kratom should be banned. And we, of course, stand resolute that as we've been able to work with those states, that there hasn't been a single one since 2017 when the FDA went on its great promotional campaign encouraging every state in the union to pass a ban on kratom, that today there are still only six, and we've been successful because those legislators that listen to the science are able to understand that, in fact, kratom is, when it's responsibly manufactured, properly labeled, and age restricted, that it provides a truly safe product to consumers. Our challenge in the state of Texas is real, and this is one that is significant because of two important factors. One is that Texas is a very large market. It is not only a market leader, but it's a political leader in terms of other states looking to see what has gone on and what is going on in these individual states. And if we were to lose Texas to this wrong-headed legislation that's currently being considered, it would be a real blow to us. And before I get into the details about where we are in Texas, there's one important issue that I think the community itself has to address. There has been a long-standing discussion within the community about product forms, and the community has been divided in the past between, and currently, between raw leaf powder, and many believe that that is the only product formulation that should be available on the marketplace. And then within the community, there is the divide about products that are extracted. And so kratom extract products have been vilified, I think, unnecessarily, and because we rely on science. And to the extent the commitment and the principle that the American Kratom Association has maintained to look at properly formulated, properly labeled, and safely manufactured, these products should be available to allow consumers to have the freedom to make the choices about the kinds of products that they choose. There are some who believe that it is the extract products that has brought some of the heat on the kratom industry. And I can tell you that that is a misnomer. It is not true. What has brought us to this particular circumstance are super concentrated products that are not properly extracted. And remember, we have always stated in the Kratom Consumer Protection Acts a couple of important provisions. One is that for a product to be extracted, that it has to follow the extraction guidelines in USP 467, which means that the solvents that are used to properly extract the products are limited so that they cannot create a hybrid where you have a super concentrated product that has lots of residual solvents, unknown artifacts in the product. So if they use the USP 467 standard, which we mandate in the KCPAs, these are safe products. It may not be the preferred product that you personally use, and it may not be the product that, in terms of the extracts, that because they tend to come in some of these beverages, and there's a belief that that's attracted a lot of attention, and to a certain extent that's true about these the little shots that are sold that appear to draw a lot of attention by politicians and law enforcement officials. But it's important in context to see exactly what's happening in the state of Texas. Senator Perry is sincere in his belief that kratom should be banned. He recognizes openly, and those of you that watched the hearing or attended saw him acknowledge that, oh, I understand that kratom can have benefits, that people are actually benefiting from it. Because of the way the marketplace is today, he said we can't separate the good from the bad, so we should ban it all. Now, that's a wrong-headed view of the way that we regulate products. We simply don't do that because some innovative bad actor comes in and develops a product formulation on any product, you name it, and then decides that they're going to challenge the product itself and bring a bad name to it. And the solution to this, and it is a time-honored solution in adulterated products across the spectrum of both pharmaceutical and dietary supplement and botanical supplement products. You identify the adulterated product and you eliminate it from the marketplace. That's the simple message, and it's one that's important in the state of Texas for us to unify behind. Even if you have these strongly held beliefs about the differences between raw leaf powder and the extracts, the battle that is waging in Texas will have long-range impacts if the people that are pure leaf kratom products advocates sit on the sidelines and let this bill become law. The great news is that I think as a result of the powerful testimonies that were provided in the committee about the value that kratom offers, and there was not a significant discussion about the difference between properly extracted products and raw leaf products. But the message was powerful. And thank you to each of those advocates that had the courage. And it's not an easy thing to do to stand up in front of a group of legislators or to speak into a microphone. These can be great challenges, but the courage of the people who did it, the passion that they delivered, and in some cases, the analytical data that was provided, particularly by some of the vendors, was absolutely magnificent. And it turned the tide. And I think that Senator Perry saw it. Unfortunately, he didn't see it clearly enough. I had the opportunity to meet with his senior staffer on this issue after the hearing and before Senator Perry filed his substitute bill. And despite our best efforts to explain in detail all of the science behind these provisions, what Senator Perry has now focused on is that he is only going to allow raw leaf powder. And I know that some in the community said, oh, that's great, we don't have to worry anymore. Here's why it's a mistake. Because what Senator Perry also did is said that kratom in whatever form that is acceptable under his bill, which is principally raw leaf powder, that it cannot be sold in any establishment, retail establishment, that also sells hemp. You could see why he would target that because he's a crusader against hemp products or CBD. You cannot sell it in an establishment that sells vape products. Again, understandable with the position that he has taken, and of course the stigma that's attached to smoke shops that sell those kind of products. But then he says any establishment that sells alcohol cannot sell a kratom product. Any establishment that sells a cigarette product cannot sell a kratom product. So you are left with such a small number of retail establishments that will be available. What you have is a constructive ban on kratom. When I made that argument to the senior staffer on Senator Perry's staff, he acknowledged it. He said, this is just the way we think we have to restrict the sales of kratom products. Remember, that means raw leaf powder too. So anyone who thinks that you got a victory because he didn't include raw leaf powder in an overall ban, you're making a mistake. Because this is the front edge of a bigger problem, because I guarantee you he'll be back when he feels like he has the ammo to do it, to take out all kratom. This is our beachhead now, and we need to unify and we need to fight for access of consumers to safely formulated kratom products that are properly labeled and age restricted. The current status is that after the Senate State Affairs Committee meeting, Senator Perry did introduce a substitute bill, which changed it from a ban to the constructive ban that I've just described. And he told his colleagues, excuse me, I've got a case of pneumonia that I'm trying to get over. He told his colleagues categorically that he recognized and had solved the problem for kratom consumers with his new bill. He did anything but in his mind, he sincerely believes that he has done that. He is, respectfully, sincerely wrong because of the marketplace conditions that really should require, however, the products are marketed in any retail chain, wherever it gets, it should be done with the proper labeling, proper formulations, and it should not be such a dividing line about what other products are sold in those retail establishments. So our goal here is to excuse me, now tell the other members of the Senate. Now, it is currently in the Senate Administration Committee, and that's the committee that makes a decision about how bills come out, how they're debated, or whether they go on the consent calendar. We will obviously on Monday morning be targeting those committee members, but we also want to target the entire Senate. The reason is that we've been greatly encouraged as our lobbying team has been talking to members of the Senate to see that Senator Perry's bill, however powerful he is, and he is a very powerful senator, however impassioned he is about this topic, we're starting to see cracks where other senators are saying, maybe I don't want to restrict consumer access to a safely formulated product. I don't want to see the kind of restrictions that are in this bill with respect to the businesses because this is anti-consumer. It is. It is anti-small business. Clearly is. And it will impact the livelihood of many small businesses who rely in part on, excuse me, on part on the sales of kratom products that are safely formulated, properly labeled, and age gated. So these are the kinds of challenges that we're facing, but we see an opportunity. And if nothing else, on Monday morning, when we ask you to do a couple of things, we can have an impact over on the House side as well, because they will see how this battle is unfolding, the arguments that were being made. So what we are asking is that on Monday morning, and we will send out the details, a couple of things from you. One is, and the ideal situation is that if you live in Texas, you contact your state senator and you give them the talking points. This bill should be defeated in its present form. It is anti-consumer because it restricts access to safely formulated, properly labeled kratom products. It should be defeated because it is anti-business, because the backbone of Texas economy are small businesses. And this takes a select group of retailers, targets them because they happen to be selling a product that is safely formulated, properly labeled. Why in the world would you do that except for this frustration that Senator Perry feels about kratom and generally opposing kratom in any form, but conceding that he had to do something in order to accommodate the pushback that was generated by, initiated, and eloquently portrayed by the kratom advocates in the committee. So he was moved by that. He also, through his staff member, told me that he was impressed with the testimony of the experts, Dr. Kirsten Smith, obviously Bob Durkin, former FDA official, Senator Bramble was there, and they all made the pitch. And then there were a lot of advocates, as everyone knows, and particularly I would single out the vendors who were able to explain the kinds of ethical practices that they engage in and their commitment to safely formulated kratom products. It was extremely difficult for Senator Perry to make the argument that somehow that wasn't sufficient. So again, Monday morning, we're going to ask everyone to contact your senator. And then if you don't live in Texas or you don't live, everyone lives in Texas, obviously has a senator you want to contact. If you don't live in Texas, we'd like you to also participate in two ways. One, we're going to have an email bridge so that you'll know exactly where to send an email that tells your story. Again, concisely, but makes the point that this is unfair. In its present form, this bill needs to be defeated or significantly amended. And then we're going to ask you to make calls where you pick up the phone and call. You will get a staff member. That staff member may or may not listen to you, may or may not have the ability to do one thing or another in the office other than answer the phones, but they will report that the phones are ringing off the hook about this Kratom bill, and we simply have to be in a position to fight it, and they need to know that there is a substantial number of consumers. Now, one qualification is that under the Texas Constitution, one of the members of the state Senate that we are not going to be contacting is Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. We have a separate lobbying effort that we have deployed. His office has been open to it, is very interested in learning more about the Kratom topic. And so we're going to, and he sits as the president of the Senate. So, really bombarding him with emails and phone calls will not be productive. Whereas the other members are just one vote. Lieutenant Governor Patrick is a significant voice and can be a particular advocate for us if we convince him, based on our separate lobbying efforts with the science and his understanding of the small business community, he could help in asking Senator Perry to stand down on this. This is a process that likely, given Senator Perry's commitment to pass this bill, his immense power he has in the state Senate there, that it will go through the Senate. Perhaps not. And if we can get it modified or defeated there, it's great. But we really know that our battle is going to take place in the Texas House of Representatives. And it is a vastly different political body than the Senate. Not unusual in these bicameral legislative bodies, but this one is particularly acute because of the unique political infrastructure makeup of the Texas House of Representatives, where you have a speaker as a Republican in a Republican majority caucus, was actually only elected because of the support of about 40 Democrats. And so there's a true division within the Texas House, and gives us an opportunity to have more of a voice than we otherwise might have had in a traditional political scenario as would exist in a red state like that. So we're going to ask again for all Senate members except for Lieutenant Governor Patrick, who serves as the president of the Senate, and phone calls and emails on Monday and Tuesday as we proceed along with these messages. Now, people often ask me, if I make a phone call, what should I do? Simple thing to do is simply write down a couple of talking points before you get on the call, because when that staffer picks up, you have this sense of panic. What should I do? What should I do? Just think about what you're saying. Introduce yourself. Tell them where you live. Tell them that you are a Kratom consumer who's very concerned about Senator Perry's bill, that it really needs to be amended or defeated, because in its present form, it creates an impossible barrier to access to safely formulated Kratom products, which we all know in our particular situation that it can help people, that it is helping people, and that in its current form, it simply has to be defeated. So Senate Bill 1868 in the Texas legislature, currently in the state Senate, needs to be defeated or amended. And that's our message. And then you can give your personal story about how Kratom has helped you or has saved your life, because those obviously are appealing on a constituent basis to these offices. And trust me, even though you may have a staffer that does not have any idea what you're talking about, identifying the Kratom bill, Senate Bill 1868 and Senator Perry will give them enough specific information for the roadmap that they can report to their bosses that this phone is ringing off the hook. And the same is true for the emails to be able to do that. So you'll receive tomorrow directions from the AKA on how you can effectively communicate these, both with phone calls and by email to your senator or to all of the senators, so that they understand that there is an overwhelming, passionate community in the state of Texas that relies upon access to these safe products. So that's essentially the pitch that we're asking for you to do. I cannot overemphasize how important it is, because, as I said at the outset, we have these issues where bans are popping up, and if Texas falls, we're going to have a significant problem in cascading effects in other states. And trust me, other legislators who are anti-Kratom are going to be up there pounding the pulpit, pointing to the fact that kratom is a bad thing going forward. I'm gonna go to the questions that are here, and then if you have more questions, just add them to the Q&A section. Alex asked if we all know what happened to CSSB 1868 versus Senate Bill 1868. The Texas Gov page says that 1868 was substituted. That's true. And on a basic reading seems to only touch synthetics, while 1868 goes far further. The substitute bill that is currently before the Texas Senate goes much further than just banning the synthetics. It does do that, but it also bans all the extracted products, and it bans the source of sale even for kratom pure leaf products to again to only those entities that don't sell cigarettes, alcohol, hemp products, or vape. And that's a restriction that knocks out the significant majority of convenience stores that sell kratom today in the state of Texas. And by the way, it knocks out virtually every retail outlet because they all sell these adult products, alcohol and cigarettes. So you might find a mom and pop operation going on, and you'll see that it's a very difficult problem. Anthony asked, "What's up with the issue of zero point zero 0.01 maximum on 7-OH?" Let me clarify something that's important. The 7-hydroxymetrogenine, in the way that it is currently being manufactured and marketed, is an unapproved drug. It is an illegal product. It exceeds any safety standard that's known for a kratom product, and it is something that needs to be banned in every market possible. What Senator Perry did, and I told his staffer the problem with this is that he plucked a number out of the air. He was trying to say, I don't want to see any 7-hydroxymetrogenine. I explained to him that the rationale behind previously passed KCPAs, including in the state of Texas, that the upper limit of not greater than 2% of the overall fraction of the alkaloids in the product could be 7-hydroxymetrogenine. What that simply recognizes is the reality that in the naturally occurring 7-OH that occurs after the harvesting of the leaves, during the drying process, it never gets to that level. If you were to convert that 2% maximum of the total alkaloid content of the product, it would convert to less than 1 milligram of 7-OH in a product. So that's a safe standard. There's no question about that. What Senator Perry did is just went too far. He said 0.1%. Now, here's the problem with that. You can't quantify it. There is no way that there is any reasonable test that would be available for the state of Texas to determine whether or not 0.01 max on a 7-OH product is there. The lowest quantifiable level is 0.3%. And that would have been a more rational way to do it. Or he could have just said not greater than 1 milligram. I participated in a hearing in Rhode Island last week where a representative from the Heart Group, which is one of the leading industry advocacy organizations for the 7-OH industry, where its representative Vince Sanders testified before the Rhode Island House of Representatives that their view is that 7-OH should be allowed and not greater than 28 milligrams per serving. That is an outrageous amount of 7-OH to be in a per serving. There is zero, I emphasize zero science to document the safety of that product. There is zero science to document the safety of the product at even the lower serving size, which Mr. Saunders' own company makes of 7.5 milligrams per serving, which you have to split the pill in order to get that. This is a false statement for anyone to claim that 7-OH is safe above that 1 milligram level. But in the Texas case, Senator Perry just overreacted, I believe, acted on an emotional level rather than a science level. And that's why you got to that ridiculously low level along the way. Anthony also asked whether all liquids are banned in this bill. In the statements that were made by Senator Perry in the presentation to the committee of his substitute bill, he clearly indicated that he wants it just to be pure leaf powder. And so I think you can take to the bank that this is a huge problem that we're dealing with. that we're working with. So that's sort of where we are as we go forward. Amanda asked the question, just to clarify, will the Senate hearing be on Monday, the 21st? There is no hearing scheduled yet. There will be a discussion in the Senate Administration Committee, and they could at any moment pass it out onto the floor. What we want to do is influence the vote on the Senate floor. It is our belief, based on intelligence we have gathered, that the Senate Administration Committee is not going to have enough votes to block the Senator Perry's bill from making it to the floor. So we have got to alert members of the Senate in Texas to work as hard as they can in order to improve this bill with amendments or to just flat kill it. So that's going to be very important. Richard Morris says he lives just north of Austin. He's already submitted a letter. He will call the numbers on Monday. Thank you for doing that. Would it be helpful to show up in person on Monday? The answer to that, I think, is a qualified no, it wouldn't. There may be a date later in the week where we could use your help. We're going to watch and get the advice of our lobbying team on the ground. We've retained 3 separate lobbying firms there to work this issue. That's how important it is. And we're going to gather intel on this, and we can let you know. I think that this is a critically important issue for us in Texas. It's a huge market and everything we can do there. And so your voice in showing up and going to the member offices will be very important. And if you are able to take a day, I would say Tuesday is more likely a better day because the Senate will all be back. You will have staff people on site on Monday, but you won't have as many senators. They may come in later in the day, but I think Tuesday would be a better bet if you wanted to make sure that you could visit as many Senate offices as you want. Amanda asked, what does it mean for Kratom vendors in Texas? If you are selling Kratom in a retail outlet that has cigarettes or alcohol or vape or hemp products, you can't sell. And so that's a significant intrusion on the freedom of individuals to sell safely formulated, properly labeled, and age-restricted products. There's no basis to do, and certainly no example. I mean, think about the logic of it. You would think that Senator Perry could say, okay, well, you can't sell alcohol where there are cigarettes being sold. They don't say that. If you look at the safety profile of cigarettes and alcohol and then compare it or contrast it, frankly, to Kratom, you can see there's no comparison. You have huge health impacts on these dangerous substances documented with clear scientific evidence, and he's now trying to make Kratom equivalent to them, and it's a false equivalency. So this is a disaster for Kratom vendors in the state of Texas. Now we have absolutely been working hard on trying to educate these senators about the impacts on these vendors, but your voice obviously will help. Mike asked, would it also make it illegal for Kratom companies to possess extracts? Yes, because under this bill, it bans any extract product, and that criminalizes it. That's just the flat fact of the matter. And so it's very important on how that goes through. I'm going to rush through this on some of the Texas things, come back to some of the other questions. Gabby from El Paso, is there a date when the Senate will be voting on this bill? Unknown at this point, but we will alert you through our email alert system when we find out. It's one of those things that happens where the committee chairs make decisions about what they're going to run, and then there's a Senate president that decides what the order of bills will be held. It's a complicated process, not one that's easily predictable. And so all we can do is do our best to keep you alerted on what's going on. The idea that you're willing to, Amanda, to go down there, fly down and give another testimony when they have another hearing set, that will happen over on the House side, where they will take testimony. Now, I say that, and I say it with some assurance based on what happened in the Texas Senate. I can tell you there are some states where no matter what we do, best planning possible, we get hornswoggled. A great example of that is in the state of Arkansas, when one of the legislative procedures that's available to members is to call the question for immediate consideration. And it doesn't matter who's talking. It doesn't matter how many witnesses have been heard, if any. They just call the question. And that happened in Arkansas in the House hearing after they had heard the governor's representative from the health department. They heard from a pharmacist from the health department. And then some member said, I move for immediate consideration. That is a non-debatable motion. It passed, cut off all debate. So that could happen. And that may happen, particularly if there's a rush to get out, if there's a huge agenda of bills. This is part of the legislative process that is most frustrating. Generally, when you sign up and the chairman sees how many people signed up, typically what they do is reduce the amount of time they give you. They don't cut you off. And so that's why it's important to be there as we go forward here. But thank you, Amanda, for your willingness to do that. And we need to be teed up to go to the House side there in the Texas House of Representatives. Um, David asked whether we can specify to everyone which branch of politicians to contact, their local congressman, their respective senator, or the ag commissioner, uh, who do all they can to contact the local level and state. In this particular case, in this alert that we're doing, we're asking every advocate to call a state senator in the Texas Senate, with the exception of the Senate president, who is Lieutenant Governor Patrick. We don't want to bombard him, but everyone else is fair game. Um, Kamal asked, as a Kratom liquid shot vendor, how else can I fight back against this law? You need to join us. You need to get in there and fight. Every one of your customers needs to be alerted that they need to be contacting their senators. Give them the QR code and our alerts that lets them sign up, to send an email, to make a call. This is, I trust me, this is ground zero in this battle. We have got to win this battle, or we'll see a terrible erosion of what's going on. So Anthony asks, when are we going to be able to use science to prove the safety? Uh, Anthony, I'm telling you, I talked for an hour and 40 minutes to Senator Perry's lead staffer on this, and he was polite. He seemed to get some of it, but it didn't matter. And that's the science is not speaking to some of these anti-kratom people as much as your voices. And so while it's a balancing act, if I were going to predict the most important thing that happens over the next week in the Texas Senate, it is going to be the voices of constituents. We have distributed scientific material. We've distributed specific amendments that we recommend to fix the Perry substitute bill. To date, no one's picked up on those things, so we're going to have to just keep fighting as we go along. Michael asked, so plain leaf is still removed from the existing ban? That's true. The amended Senate bill scratched out leaf to not have any higher than 2% content and replaced it with 1%. My existing online vendor sells product with between 1 and 2. Is that supposed to change now? Well, Michael, I'm just going to tell you, if someone is selling a product that has between 1 and 2% 7-hydroxymetrogenine, that's not naturally occurring, I can tell you. Now, it's possible, depending on the way the testing methodology was done, but the rule is that it cannot exceed 2% of the overall alkaloid fraction in the product. So that's something you need to check into. I think it's difficult, but by moving it to 1, it is a more restrictive standard. Our experience has been that you don't see even that level on commercially available products. Just to give you an example, the University of Florida conducted tests on 341 commercially available products that were collected as a part of a study on kratom about a year and a half to 2 years ago. And when they completed that study of those 341 products, none had greater than 0.3% of 7-hydroxymetrogenine, which is the quantifiable level. So it may be that they didn't have the 0.3%. It's just that that's the level at which they could define as to whether there was a presence of any 7-hydroxy. So I'm just going to tell you that I think if someone's got between 1 and 2, there might be a question about that product. But maybe it's the way we're actually defining what the product context is. So we need to work on that. David asked, for those of us outside of Texas, there's still value in submitting our messages. I can tell you that Texas is a market leader in the nation. So yes, I think you have a legitimate case to make that you should be contacting Texas senators, because the policy decisions that are made in the state of Texas will have an impact around the country in the way that kratom is being treated. Jamie asked, would this affect online sales originating from outside of Texas into Texas? According to Senator Perry, it will. And certainly if you define a criminalized product as being an extract product, it won't matter where it comes from. You're going to be criminalized for it. And so that's the sad case of what is going on here along the way. Amanda asked, will Texas vendors be required to use a Texas lab for their testing? The answer to that, under Senator Perry's substitute bill, is yes. He is requiring that. I made the point to him that the issue here is not that it's a Texas lab. And by the way, there's no reason to trust a Texas lab any more than a lab outside the state if they're using a proper Kratom method and if they are accredited. They're an independent lab, which they have to be. If they're accredited, they are not going to sell their souls and their accreditation because of some buck that a guy slips under the doorstep in order to test a product with a different testing methodology than is required under the law. So I think it is, I made it clear that we thought that was a ridiculous provision. I did support the idea that if the Texas regulatory authorities determined there was a question about the compliance with the statute of a Kratom product, they certainly could choose a lab in Texas to do the testing, and I think that's perfectly appropriate. But why, if you imagine this, if 50 states in the United States say you can sell Kratom, but you have to test your product in our state, think about the enormous costs that are associated with that going forward. So that's just something to think about in terms of practicality. This obviously didn't have a lot of good thought put into it when they put, that was all very parochial and protective of Texas, but didn't make much sense to do that. Carrie asked, and thank you, Carrie, for asking this question. Is it most helpful for us to donate to AK to help them with lobbying? The only way we can hire 3 lobbyists in the state of Texas, and we need them, by the way, very expensive to do it, is through the generosity of people who support us. And so we welcome every donation, and as generous as you can be, we appreciate it very much. So thank you, Carrie, for asking that question. Jen, I've answered your question about lab testing in the state of Texas, and it just doesn't make any sense. Why didn't AKA Chelsea? Well, I'm going to get back to these other states here in just a second. What happens to the end consumer if Kratom is banned? So you still can buy a Pure Leaf product if you can find a retail outlet to sell it, and you can buy Pure Leaf product online. Your Kratom consumer is in jeopardy when you attempt to buy a properly formulated, safely manufactured, properly labeled extract product. So I think that that's very important for people to consider. Alex asked, would it be advisable to preemptively start contacting representatives as well as senators? No, we're going to have to work the House. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think we need to get ahead of this because the House is not focused on this at all. They will look at what comes over, and we're hopeful that we're going to be able to influence on the Senate floor. Some courageous senator will say, whoa, let's think about this. Anti-business, anti-consumer, that's not the Texas way. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. Why are we doing this? And that might prompt an amendment. So I would hold your fire on the House side. I understand the instinct, by the way, but I think right now we're good. So let me get down here and see. Will this affect Alish may ask if will this affect the Texas vendor who only sells Kratom products online? You're only going to be able to sell Pure Leaf Kratom. That's it. And so that to that extent, it will affect you. So let me go back and answer some of these other questions that are not specifically on Texas, but obviously were important. Adam asked if there's any word on Florida. We at the American Kratom Association fought and opposed the Kratom bill in Florida. We did so because it is the most onerous overregulation that was developed by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, who is no friend of Kratom. And they developed such an onerous scheme. They convinced Senator Collins to run the bill for them. The evaluation by the legislative fiscal analyst, which means the person who evaluates how much is this bill going to cost the state, estimated, and it was concurred by the Department of Agriculture that the fiscal note for that bill, Senator Collins' Senate bill, was $15 million. That contrasts to other states where you're going anywhere from 250 to maybe $700,000 to fully enforce this law. The It's mind-boggling when you think what's happening. Representative Owen, first term representative there, seems like a good guy, heart's in the right place, trying to do the right thing. He was the House carried the House version of Senator Collins' bill. He was willing to listen to us and started considering some of the amendments. And then the Speaker's office came in and dropped a different version, which was even more regulatory than Senator Collins' bill, modeled after the hemp legislation, and they just plugged in Kratom on it. It was a horrible bill. That those two bills are now dead. And by the way, the fiscal note on the hemp bill in the House, in the hijacked House bill, was 15 million plus 2 or 3 million more. So it was certainly not something that could have survived and didn't. What we are working on in cooperation with other advocacy groups in Texas today is to try to identify a vehicle where we can apply the specific regulations on 7-hydroxymetrogenine products. So that's still an open question. But absent some unforeseen event, some manna from heaven where Florida finds the money to spend 17 or 18 million dollars on regulating kratom when they can't even afford basic services for their citizens, I don't think that that bill's going anywhere. Uh, and uh, and that's where the things are. Um, Adam asked if I know whether Indonesia is in talk with the administrations regarding the tariffs. The Indonesian delegation arrived in DC today, and they will be here for the next week, and they are working with the administration trying to resolve broad issues with Indonesian goods and the tariffs that are imposed. And they have some real advantages with some critical minerals, particularly nickel, that the United States needs. And so those are very intense negotiations. The Indonesian representatives are not certain how they're going to get by with the self-imposed tariff that they have of 20, I think it's 25% on kratom coming out, which is in addition to a normal tariffing that goes on. So, Adam, thanks for asking, but they're obviously going to be in some intense negotiations, and we're tracking that as hard as we can. I worked with the Indonesian delegation to help them make recommendations on the lobbying firms that they should retain, and it'll be interesting to see how these discussions play out. Edie asked, is there time, if there's time, and I'm going to give you the time, what happened in North Carolina yesterday? I was there and we had a fascinating discussion. And this is probably a great illustration of what happens sometimes in these hearings. We had meetings with the Senate chairman, with the sponsor, I'm sorry, with the House chairman and our sponsor prior to the hearing. It was a fully packed hearing with bills, and it was looking like we were going to be shunted off into the second segment of the hearing. They had one before session, and then they would take up at 4 o'clock or whenever the session ended, the second tranche of bills. And so we prevailed through excellent lobbyists we have in North Carolina to allow Senator Kirk Bramble, who had traveled from Utah, taken the red eye, got there at 9:30 in the morning, was ready to testify at 11 o'clock, but he had to get back home on a 4 o'clock flight. And what an extraordinary schedule he had to follow. And so we prevailed upon the chairman to allow Senator Bramble to speak, and he did, a great job. And then having been told that they were going to punt until the afternoon session for the additional testimony, we went over to the Senate side where we had set up appointments for Senator Bramble to meet a number of colleagues there, some of whom he's known through his various national legislative efforts. And while we were in the meeting with the Senate president, we got word that the House chairman decided he was just going to run the bill. And so our KCPA got passed unanimously out of committee. Now, it's not a perfect bill. We've got a couple of issues that people cobbled onto it that we're working on, but this was a great step forward for us, and it did pass unanimously. And Edie, thanks for asking. Again, one of those crazy things that happens in the legislative process that you don't always know about. Nicholas asked, are there any updates with Wisconsin? This is a little bit of a quagmire. We're now negotiating with the Controlled Substances Board. We're going to file a formal petition with them to overturn it because we think that they have the authority under the law to overturn it. And their claim that it doesn't meet the 8 factors, which means they can't vote any other way. And they're sloughing it back to the legislature who originally enacted the ban when in fact the law says that any changes are in the purview of the Controlled Substances Board. So we're working hard to try to convince them Failing convincing them, we're going to file an official petition, and we're going to go forward along the way. Uh, and then let's see. I know there was another couple of questions on other issues. I've answered Florida. Why didn't we testify in Arkansas? We testified in the House hearing, and we had a lineup of experts who we had flown in, which included Jack Henningfield and Bob Durkin and Kirsten Smith. After the testimony in the Senate hearing concluded by Senator Ledding and myself, and as Jack Henningfield was taking his seat, the process was invoked that I mentioned earlier, where a member of the Senate panel said, I move immediate question, and we ended up passing unanimously. There's a great backstory to what happened on that, because going into that committee, we thought we were going to lose because three of our supporters were in other committees presenting their bills because of how long the Senate that day had stayed in session. We ended up getting unanimous do pass. In the House side, it was a stacked deck against us because the governor's office authorized the Department of Health general counsel to testify that the governor was opposed to this bill. They had a pharmacist from the Department of Health who said outrageously outdated and inaccurate information, which we're now trying to correct, but they invoked the same thing, immediate consideration, and the bill was defeated. We've got work to do, obviously, with the governor's office before we can proceed there. But that's the circumstance that we ran into. We have an issue in Louisiana, very similar to Texas, where you have a ban bill that's in play. We also have a KCPA. I thought that Chris McCurdy and others did a great job in Louisiana. It is a very, very controversial issue there. We've been working in Louisiana for 5 years. The one hope I'll tell you is that we had the same experience in Mississippi, and now it looks like the governor has on his desk a KCPA. I don't like the excise tax at 25%. I mean, I think everybody reasonably could say that in order to fund enforcement activities, putting an excise tax of, say, 5% could be livable. 25% is punitive and a dumb public policy. But those bills are on the governor's desk, and he's expected to sign them, absent some magnificent act of God somewhere that someone prevails on him not to do it. But I think that's where we are. So Louisiana, it's critical that Louisiana people also be alert and also participate in Texas because it's again it's neighboring states, things that we need to work with as we go forward here. Um, any update on the state of the federal KCPA? We've had meetings all day today with members of our sponsors who are working on tweaks that we've made to the federal bill that we want to be refiled, which includes addressing the 708 issue. So I think you'll see the federal bills filed when the appropriations process concludes in the next month, and then you'll see our bill refiled. So I think we're working here. Sarah asked, it says it's great news about Florida. Should we stay on top of signing a petition and reaching out to our Florida representatives? Yes, we want to get as many people together to be able to say to those that fought the battle for us, to say thank you to them and show them that we had the power of the Florida citizens behind us. And so it's pretty incredible. David asked the question about the cost. If you're talking about the lobbying cost, lobbyists typically run anywhere from $9,000 to $15,000 a month, and so and they won't sign contracts for 2 months or 3 months. Now Texas is in session longer, but they want sometimes 6 to 9 month contracts, sometimes a year. So we're sort of held hostage by that, but we're working hard on that. Michael asked about New York. I've talked about Livingston Parish it's just we have to fight these battles locally in Louisiana. So we're doing the best we can. In New York, there is a rally and a ban bill. You've got an impassioned assemblywoman there that's going after Kratom. We've been working on this issue for 4 or 5 years in New York. We're going to continue to fight it. We think it's drawing attention here for this to get addressed because the ban bill draws fire, and so we're able to educate people along the way. Misty asked a personal question. She goes, "People don't realize how much you travel. It's only April, so how many times have you traveled so far?" I just noticed I try to stay at Marriott hotels because my wife says if she tries to find me, she'll check the local Marriott. But the I think I had 57 nights so far, meaning I'm out of town traveling here in April so far this year. So it helps me get status at these hotels, but it is a grind to do it. And that's where I picked up my pneumonia. I was on a flight from Providence in one of the very small planes, and there was a service dog, very shaggy, very large, and it kept kicking dander. And I'm hyper allergic to dogs. And then I had to get on a plane and go to Austin and the next day, or I'm sorry, to Miami the next day, and it just progressed into pneumonia. So I'm really struggling with it. But the travel schedule is rigorous. It'll probably calm down in the end of June, early part of July in terms of legislative sessions. But then we kick off a number of meetings that these national legislative organizations have where we have the opportunity to meet with legislators in a less intense environment, more social environment, and we can tell our story. So we do a lot of that kind of thing along the way. Um, Misty says people are upset because AK didn't show up for Louisiana and they're mad at Dr. McCurdy. He said dirty drug, not realizing that pharmacology talk. People are not perfect. Chris McCurdy is a magnificent scientist. He's got it right on the science. We can make mistakes, and that happens. I've done it. I've said things that I didn't intend to say. Been called out on it. So we're going to be able to clarify all of that. Um, let's direct our energy and our focus in the right place. And I encourage everyone to do that. And let's stay focused on where it's happening. Amanda says we've had a lot of hearings in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Is there anything you know? We've been told Massachusetts is working on a full ban. They are. We also have a KCPA, and so we're fighting hard there too. These local efforts are very difficult. We formed a special group to work on the local bans with John Shinholzer and Laura Romney, who are helping us, and they're magnificent advocates. They're fighters, warriors, and they're doing great work. And we need that to know that this is the battleground that the anti-kratom people have selected because they lose in the states consistently. And the state policies, bans are verboten. We have to fight those things. But the strategy of having local bans is one that we have to really be diligent on and do everything we can and inform these local people about what is going on. Um, Melody said we can assume local bans and threats will increase. Yes, they will, because to the extent that they find success in those areas, the good news is that there are so many local jurisdictions that it's an enormous amount of resources that our opponents have to expend in order to get there. We have to do the same to fight back on them, but at least they're expending their resources as well. And so we're fighting hard on all of this. Anja asked about what about the issue with the Southern Nevada Health District in Nevada? They're trying to remove all kratom from my store, stating they're unsafe foods per the FDA. We have been engaged with the Southern Nevada Health District on three other vendors, and this is an enormously difficult problem because these self-anointed FDA experts claim FDA says that it's an illegal dietary ingredient. The FDA says that statement on their website, and they did not do the required rulemaking. And by the way, it's not accurate. And even the FDA's own testing of kratom determined that kratom was safe at all dose levels. And they're taking a nuanced position that the FDA has taken, and we think without authorization of the statute, making a claim that it's an adulterated dietary ingredient when they have not gone through the required rulemaking. We are in this fight. I have a meeting with the attorneys next week about the Nevada situation, and so we'll keep you posted on this. But it is frustrating because these people are acting like there's the self-appointed FDA agents, when in fact, in the state of Nevada, it is legal to sell kratom under the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. And so this is the problem that we run into. Um, so David makes a comment about the cost the state will need to enforce the bill on the table. There's no cost that's been articulated. This is a ongoing problem for us because the assessment of what it costs to regulate generally are done by these state bureaucrats who they see dollar signs, and that's understandable. They also want to make sure that they don't fail, and so they overestimate the cost so that they aren't going to get caught failing along the way. We think there's a rational way for Kratom to be regulated. We've devised a new Model Kratom Consumer Protection Act, which we want to get ratified next week by our Kratom Industry Council so that we can say that the Kratom industry is behind it, and that they're willing to be regulated. And it provides for excise taxes, it provides for more self-enforcement and penalties on the non-compliant product manufacturers, penalties on retailers that sell non-compliant products when they know that there is a website that posts all the registered and qualified products. So we're coming up with innovative ideas to reduce the fiscal note and cooperate with the states in order to give them some reassurance that these products are going to be properly regulated. One idea that we're working on that you can see soon is that we're looking at developing a Kratom safe product protection group that will go out and do secret shopper identification of non-compliant products in the individual states where there is a KCPA and where action can be taken going along. The, uh, these fights are important, and we need to adapt as we see the objections that are created, and as we go forward here. So we're in this fight. We're going to continue to battle it as best we can. Chelsea, thanks for your kind wishes. I'm hoping to feel better soon. It's just one of those things that happens. Um, Troy says, Representative Boyer, Governor Landry, and myself all graduated from the same high school. If we can get this KCPA moving, this is great. And let me just say, this is an important point that needs to be evaluated. Relationships count. They're extremely important. I sat in a legislator's office and I was doing my elevator pitch in a very tall skyscraper for Kratom. And the staffer reports to her boss, a state legislator. She said, "My brother was saved by Kratom." I could have hugged and kissed her. I mean, that made the difference in in what's happening and having a relationship with someone like that to understand it. And we thanked her and said we want to continue to talk to her. This is important. And yet, then what has been pointed out here is very important. If you have a relationship with your legislator, and by the way, you can develop one just by calling, talking to them, go to their town hall meetings, whatever it takes. I tell Kratom vendors all the time, join your local chamber of commerce. Make yourself mainstream. Don't be the outlier out there that the city council wants to yell about. Get involved, be a part of the community. And the same is true for advocates. You can go to these town hall meetings along the way. And so this is an important thing that we're doing, and finding these relationships makes a real difference as we go along. Um, Misty asked, how's Advocacy Day in DC looking? I got a brief report that it's looking great. I've been running so crazy. I checked in with the office, and they reported to me that the meetings, it looks like the meetings are coming along great, and that our advocates are going to have a great day. This is next Wednesday in Washington, D.C., and it gives us a chance to work on it. Misty makes a great point that she's developed relationships with representatives on Facebook, and hey, whatever it takes in order to do that. I have a son. I shouldn't say this because he'll be mad at me. I had a son that we'd given up on in terms of his getting married because he's a kid with Crohn's disease, got his left eye shot out at scout camp when he was 13 years old. He has after effects of having Lyme disease. It was undetected until it was too late. And this kid just felt like he was damaged goods. And he found a girl online that lives in Spain. And he took a couple of trips over there without disclosing why he was going to Spain. And they ended up fell in love and they're married. And now we have this beautiful grandbaby as a result of it because he built a relationship in an unconventional sense. Maybe that's not so unconventional. My day, that was unconventional, obviously. There wasn't even any internet then. What a fabulous thing. Use the tools that are available in order to build relationships with each other and with your representatives. And always the same kind of civility that that you want to have and build friendly relationships with, even when you disagree civilly, and it'll pay dividends, and respect will come flowing back from those kinds of things. I can tell you that I've been in circumstances where I just wanted to scream at the people I'm talking to on the other side of the table that should know better, that should have better understanding of public policy issues, but it never profits to do that. And so I think that the same is true in your developing these relationships. I am I am overwhelmed with the kind of passion that advocates bring to the table. It is magnificent, and I've built relationships with people that I never would have crossed paths for, except that they showed up at a hearing to defend this plant. And we were able to develop a friendship. I'm not a very good friend because you probably, from the other end of trying to communicate with me, you find that I'm difficult, and it's just because of the press of business. But I love what the work that's being done by people in this community because it couldn't been done without us. I had occasion to describe to a reporter today in an interview when she asked me, how in the world were you able to defeat the first Kratom ban recommendation from the FDA when it was what it was, the emergency powers, 30 days, no public comment, never been had a rescission of that kind of recommendation in the history of the Controlled Substances Act? And the answer was 146,000. That was the number of Kratom advocates that went on the We the People website uh, to uh, to say don't ban Kratom. The 56 members of the House of Representatives, 51 members, 25 Democrats, 26 Republicans, only got achieved by the advocates calling their representatives and emailing them, telling help me along the way, and telling their stories, and 13 members of the Senate. And I'll tell you now that he's passed away, a Kratom consumer called the administrator of the DEA and told him not to schedule Kratom. Now, you could say, well, what difference does it make if somebody calls? And even if the administrator took the call, it was Senator Orrin Hatch who called him up, who was at the time a member of the United States Senate, a very influential member of the Senate. He was the president pro tem of the Senate. And he called the DA administrator and said, you do not schedule Kratom, because he was a Kratom consumer. So I think that it speaks to the value that all of our voices have, and how we need to keep working along the way. And I think that that Misty makes a great point here in the comments that nobody should be messaging the anti-Kratom people, and I think that's right. I don't think that anybody wins, however satisfying it may be, to say to someone who's clearly wrong. It really doesn't profit us, and we need to focus on going forward, um, as we are doing along the way. I'm going to end with this one. Anthony asked, do we have any legal recourse on the fight to fight the FDA statements that continue to be posted? First, the good news is, Anthony, that the greatest critic of Kratom at the FDA, uh, Doug Throckmorton, resigned from the FDA in early February because he could not work for the new incoming administration. That was great news because he is, I cannot tell you how influential. He's a senior member of the policy team in the commissioner's office, and he had enormous power. And it was his driver, and he was a passionate anti-Kratom person. His being gone has left a vacuum. I think that whether we like it or not, the decimation of the FDA's workforce also helps us because, again, they've got bigger fish to fry now. They're all scrambling to figure out how they're going to be able to do basic jobs that the FDA is tasked to do statutorily with a much smaller workforce. So there's going to be that. And I can tell you, it's preliminary. I can tell you that Secretary Kennedy has an understanding of Kratom and he's learning more about it. And I think he's going to end up being a friend. I'm optimistic that that's going to be the case. And so the FDA is now, and by the way, the Federal Kratom Consumer Protection Act will address directly what the FDA is doing with respect to the misinformation on the website that is not grounded in any good rulemaking that they're required to go through. And so we'll be addressing it in that standpoint as well. So it's just one of those things that we have to continue to fight the FDA on. We have pounded them with letters and legal opinions. We've gotten members of Congress to write them. So this is just a process going forward. Misty asked what happened in North Dakota. Big disappointment. We thought we were well on track there. The problem in North Dakota was bad information from a regulatory agency that misunderstood what the law was going to require them to do. They made the argument, which is why we're now responding with a different regulatory paradigm. They made the argument that they needed, in a state with 300,000 people, they needed $1.1 million to regulate kratom. It's not irrational, but you don't have to be rational in order to make some argument when you're just protecting your turf. And again, not wanting to fail. And so they had this ridiculous fiscal note, and that's what killed us. We came in and had good support for an alternative position with a trimmed down bill. But in the end, we just had some members of the legislature that wouldn't swallow it. So now we have a study, and that's unfortunately a 2-year legislative session. They won't be back in for 2 years. So we fought the good fight. We're going to be back again, and hopefully we'll have more states surrounding them that have made the decision to move forward and help on this. We had a similar problem unfortunately, in Montana. While we're not completely 100% dead there yet, we made great inroads, and still the fiscal note problem that everyone's struggling with. So that's where we are. Michael asked about the Illinois KCPA. This is again, warring legislative efforts. We are working as hard as we can to try to cooperate and coordinate with the other associations so that we don't have these competing bills going forward. And we're making a dedicated effort to do that. And I think that there is a good faith effort on the other side to do that. And so just taking a little time. And I think and I'll just say, I appreciate the fact that there is a willingness to have these discussions, because we want to make good public policy that benefits kratom consumers. And sometimes the interest of the vendors align with that, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes we have to figure out a way to make it so that everybody's interests are protected. And that's what negotiations are about, and that's what we're working on. So I know there's a lot to be done. Let me just give you a quick report on Rhode Island. And Rhode Island's, fingers crossed. We passed the bill last year, and the governor vetoed it. He did so because of input from a couple of friends who were doctors and from his agencies. We worked hard and negotiated with the governor's office, and we have crafted a bill that will be acceptable to the governor as long as it's not amended. There are some provisions of the Rhode Island bill that are not perfect, that I would not advocate for, but we accept them as a condition of getting the first step done. The commitment we had from the governor's office is that they're open in future years to look at from lessons learned once this bill is implemented. So we're hopeful, and the first hearing that we had in Rhode Island, both in the Senate side and in the House side, we did it on the same day, were fabulous. And the response, even from prior no votes on us in the House hearing, Representative Kennedy, who's our sponsor there in the House side, had a conversation with a fellow committee member who said, "I voted against you last time, but I'm voting with you this time." So I think that there's a real pathway going forward on that. So I think that's critically important. And I am going to end now, but let me ask each one of you if you would do something personal for me. One of our great friends in the kratom industry and kratom consumer community is Representative Brian Patrick Kennedy. He had a shoulder issue where he tore his shoulder apart and had to go through surgery, and was recovering magnificently from that. Had a little bit of a setback with a bacterial infection and was put in the hospital yesterday. And while there, they discovered significant blockage in his heart. And so he's going to go through open heart surgery on Monday. Please keep him in your prayers. He is a great friend and a magnificent warrior for us in the kratom community. And we need to show as much prayer for him as we can so he gets through this very difficult health problem that he has. So with that, I'll say thank you. And again, wish every one of you a very happy Easter season with your families, because we need to treasure that. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate very much.